All right, man, peace. So, brothers, in this day and age where most people are mate swapping, wife swapping, girlfriend swapping so liberally, it is very, very important that the female that you're talking to is very transparent in regards to who she's talking to. Because many of these females are dealing with multiple men and they're playing men against each other. A lot of you brothers meet these women and you allow yourselves to fall into that rabbit hole of being quote unquote in love. And this is why I make videos about that dynamic, because it is very essential that you understand what you're getting into when you commence a quote unquote relationship or you allow yourself to become somebody's quote unquote man, and what those titles entail. When you say this is my woman, that is a title that actually entails certain responsibilities. And one of the main responsibilities that the title of your woman or your girl or your wife or what have you, what that term entails is that the female is transparent in regards to who she's dealing with. And once again, that's why I make these series for you brothers, because I understand the conundrums that are purposefully set up for most men in this society, particularly most so-called black men, especially young black men. And my channel is geared towards the so-called black men, because as I always say, the so-called black man is the recipient of the most lies and the most disregard, and it's not even a close second. And that brings us to this story right here of Miss Noriella Santos, who decided that she was going to go back and forth between two different men, and it led to disastrous results. Once again, brothers, please understand, or try to make it very clear to the female that you're talking to, that you need to know who else she's dealing with, if she's dealing with someone else, what the parameters are of that relationship or relationships, if she's still interested in her quote-unquote former flame, or if she's just somebody trying to play games and be a quote-unquote female player. It's very important that you know that, because it may cost you your life if you're not interested. All right? But anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
48 Hours investigates the case of Noriella Santos, a well-educated young woman from New York who apparently had everything going for her. But her life changed when she was charged with second-degree murder of a man she had dated.
Now look at this photo right here. This gentleman here is the person who ended up dead because he was quote-unquote dating Miss Noriella Santos. But on the left, you see his phone, his BlackBerry phone. The murder occurred back in 2009. So he had a BlackBerry phone. And the number 13, which has high occultic resonance as the number that represents chaos. What do I always tell you, brothers? The woman is a what? She's an agent of chaos in general. And I know that many females get upset with that when they come on my channel. That really doesn't make a difference to me. Because as I state, my videos are geared more towards the so-called black man, because it's the so-called black man's job to change himself. It's not your job to try to change anyone else. You have to deal with people and how they conduct themselves at face value. If you're fortunate enough to come in contact with a good woman, and there are good women out there, then you deal with them accordingly. But you have to go into every situation assuming that this person is a potential agent of chaos. And that's why they have that number 13 very strategically placed next to that phone, and they decide to use that photograph for this still shot here right next to this person, right next to this young man who was killed. Because he was a casualty of chaos. Because he was not interested in knowing or understanding if that young lady that he was dealing with was only dealing with him, or if she was trying to play the game. So please keep that in mind. That's why, as an aside, that's why I also mentioned that I'm watching Mr. Odell Beckham. Because there are a lot of signs that show me that he's a monarch athlete, but that's neither here nor there.
Santos had an explanation. She says she'd given in to the demands of her abusive former boyfriend, Danny.
Look at that, her quote-unquote abusive former boyfriend, Danny. Now, they very rarely allow the Caucasian man, or in this case, the Caucasian Jewish man, to be shown as a quote-unquote woman beater. They prefer the so-called black man to be the face of spousal abuse or domestic violence. But in the case of this story, they had to show him because he was the one who was involved with the female. And you're going to see as this segment progresses why they have to show him. It's because they have to make the female out to be the victim, as opposed to being what she actually was, in my view, which is a co-conspirator. And as an aside, brothers, please understand, when you're dealing with these women, these liberal women, let me specify, most of them are very interested in boy swapping, man swapping, jumping from man to man. That's why they get so upset when the topic of a man having more than one woman is broached. It's not that they disagree with the sentiment, is that they don't want a man to have what they want. They want the power of being able to jump from man to man. And many of these females of color have a white boy in their closet, believe it or not, especially if they're attractive. Many of them have a white boy or two in their closet that nobody will ever know about. Okay? Especially a lot of these chicks online who talk about pro-blackity black, this and that. A lot of them have a white boy or two in their closet. Especially if they're attractive and they worked in corporate America or gone to a college that was quote unquote racially diverse.
So did he make her an unwitting accomplice in this murder?
Hell no.
Jim Axelrod met with Santos for her only television interview. Here's a preview of tomorrow night's 48 Hours report.
When police roll up on a body in the middle of the street, it's a mystery.
It's a complete mystery. They don't know why he's here. His wallet and his cell phone were left behind.
Michael Sinclair was a 32-year-old who lived in Brooklyn and had no obvious link to the Long Island neighborhood.
Now, this person here, Michael Sinclair, was 32 years old. The female in question, Noriella Santos, was 19 years old. That's another thing. And I mentioned this before in one of these videos. I think the Beware the Hood Rat video that YouTube tried to put all these extra censors on. Because, and I told a brother this who was commented to me about how people are flagging my videos or YouTube pulling down a few of my videos. Why is that, brothers? Because they want the so-called black man to remain in the low-level mental estate that he's at, because they're reaping the benefits of you making these same mistakes over and over again. If the so-called black man starts scrutinizing his life, starts scrutinizing the woman that he's dealing with, these things are going to lower their ability to monetize him as an entry into the prison industrial complex, as someone going through the court system, having to pay court fees and lawyer fees and child support. When you're no longer doing that, that's taking billions of dollars out of the economy. So, of course, people are going to watch the video. They're going to get upset. They're going to try to destroy the sentiment that is being pushed on this channel, because they love to see the so-called black man in a lower state mentally so that they can use you. That's what it's about. But just to get back to the point, when you're 32 years old and you're dealing with a 19-year-old, you have to understand that there are going to be a lot of hijinks afoot, a lot of silliness afoot. The woman in general does not truly start to mature until she gets to be around 44, 45 years old. At 19 years old, you're dealing with a child who's just sexually mature. So he should have understood the potentiality for nonsense.
Where his body was found.
Once we get Michael's phone records, we're able to see the numbers. One of those numbers came back to Noriella Santos.
For most of her 28 years, Noriella Santos...
Now, do you see how they try to show pictures of her as a small child to make her look innocent?
...had been the good girl.
Allegedly, she'd been the good girl for most of her life. Allegedly.
A model student. She was even an intern for the Clinton Foundation.
Well, that's a major red flag. Anytime that you're a quote-unquote minority and you're courted by the Clinton Foundation or the Ford Foundation or the Rockefeller Foundation, that means that they're tapping you for some type of future role where you can push forth many of their Luciferian principles or ideologies. So watch for this person, Noriella Santos, in the near future. And they're going to mention something else in regards to her court case that is also going to be a major red flag in regards to her. But whenever you see a so-called black or Hispanic or person of color that is being courted by the Clinton Foundation or many of these higher level quote-unquote elite foundations, they like to tap into minority communities to see who they can use as proxy agents or utilize them as intermediaries to instill certain ideologies into the quote-unquote minority community and have a brown face doing it.
Noriella was, in fact, with Michael Sinclair that night.
Noriella had started dating Michael Sinclair after breaking up with her first boyfriend.
Allegedly, she broke up with her first boyfriend. That's alleged. Now, many times, these so-called liberal females, they will have a big argument with their quote-unquote boyfriend, and they'll decide that the person who they met on the train or on the bus or in their comings and goings at a party, whose number they took for a rainy day. They'll call them up or they'll text them and they'll go out on a date with them and give them some ass or give them some fellatio, what have you. And they'll justify it by saying that they've broken up with their man. They haven't broken up. They're just quote unquote on break. And they'll introduce chaos into their own life and into the lives of simple-minded men who are not aware of what many of their tactics are. So when they say that she quote unquote broke up with her first boyfriend, I need some specificity on that. What exactly does she mean by broke up? Did she no longer speak to him? Was she no longer texting him? No longer concerned with him? Was he a non-factor in her life? Or did she just marginalize him until she decided that she was bored with the new guy and wants to go back with the old guy?
Daniel Greenspan. Daniel was something of a chameleon, changing his last name and even his persona.
When I met him, he was a privileged white boy who got kicked out of boarding school.
Yes, and you loved you that privileged white boy. As many of the modern day liberal females of color do. That's why I tell you, brothers, many of them have a so-called white boy in their closet. And when you meet these women, there's a lot of things that you have to ask them. How close are they to their fathers? Do they have a father figure in their life? Have they been with a Caucasian man before? Because as I tell you, brothers, incessantly, the liberal black woman, and you could throw the liberal Aboriginal woman in as well, this female right here, they have three altars. That is that they're globalists, meaning they want everybody to hold hands and come together. They're racialists, meaning they love to talk about race issues when it suits them, even though most of them have a white boy or two or three in the closet. And then it's feminists, which is their main altar, the veneration of the mother goddess, the worship of the feminine principle. So she sits here talking about how he was a quote unquote privileged white boy, but I guarantee you that when he approached her on that wiggle white boy shit, and I'm sure that he was on that wiggle white boy swag, she was head over heels. No, she was spinning like a top that a Caucasian Jewish white boy hit on her.
Cool. Then he wanted to be half Puerto Rican.
Well, that happens a lot, especially amongst Caucasian Jews. Look up Max Kellerman from First Take. Look up how he looked back in the 90s. He had that same look that this male here has, with the razor thin beard line and the mustache and the buzz cut. That's in for a lot of Caucasian Jews when they're in their late teens into early 20s. And they get that look and they like to dig out a bunch of Puerto Rican and Dominican chicks. Then they get older and they grow up and they realize that they have to go into law or real estate and they have to marry a Jewish woman. Some of them, though, will actually marry a woman of another race because the Caucasian Jews, they oftentimes like to utilize that tactic to help push many of their ideologies amongst the other races. As I've told you before, the fountain of most of the civil rights movements in America, the head of it is normally a Caucasian Jew. But it's very common for Caucasian Jewish dudes, especially when they're young, to take and embrace that look.
Changed his last name to Rivera, and now he's a Jew.
For Noriella.
Yeah, like I stated, they get older and then they embrace their actual quote unquote culture. He probably going into law or banking or real estate. Look at this guy now. I bet you his whole accent changed. Bet money back when he was dating her and he was 17 and 18, he was saying, yeah, son, nah, I mean, nah, I'm saying, yeah, my nigga. He's probably one of these white boys that, you know, black dudes at the school allowed to use the quote unquote N-word. And, you know, he was going back and forth with them, probably trying to out battle rap them. And he knew more Wu-Tang lyrics than everybody else. Then he turned 21, 22. It's time to grow up. He put on them glasses. He got rid of that razor thin beard. He let his Jew fro grow out a little bit. Started going back and forth to Israel, get in touch with his Caucasian Jewish side, and that was that. These people, they go through phases, man.
Ella, his name didn't matter. His attention.
Look at this. He looked like a Puerto Rican right there.
Did.
I felt loved by him.
Did it stay that way?
No. The very first time he hit me, it was about a year into the relationship. He slammed me to the floor and started kicking me and punching me.
Noriella.
Yeah, and you stayed with him through all that because you worshipped him as a god. You were happy to have a white boyfriend. Please understand, domestic violence is a you problem. After that first ass whooping, you're supposed to leave that man. And if he threatens you in some way, that's why you have family members. That's why you have police. Anybody can be dealt with. Anybody.
Noriella and Daniel split up, but in spite of the frequent abuse, later got back together.
Yeah, of course. Of course they got back together because she was quote unquote in love with him and she liked that ass whooping that he was giving her. And many of these women's deranged minds, the liberal woman, they like to get their ass whooped by certain dudes like this. Of course, a woman who's in her right mind, she's not going to want to get her ass whooped. Not only that, she's not going to try to put her hands on a man. She's not going to allow a man to put her hands on her, or to put his hands on her. And she's not going to try to precipitate a physical altercation by being verbally disrespectful. So it's called mental maturity. The words that you allow to come forth out of your mouth can bring forth either life or death. That's in Proverbs, I believe, 18:21.
After she'd been dating Michael, Noriella says Daniel then discovered he had a sexually transmitted disease. He blamed Michael and demanded a meeting.
Now listen to that. Supposedly she broke up with the Caucasian Jewish dude. That's when she decided that she was going to date the brother from Brooklyn, Michael Sinclair. She comes back to Daniel, and Daniel discovers that he now has a STD, and he blames Michael, the black dude. Now, all we know, according to this story, is that she was with two guys at the same time. We don't know for a fact that the reason why Mr. Michael Greenspan, Daniel Greenspan, how he got the STD was from Michael Sinclair. There could have been a third guy involved, a fourth guy involved that nobody knows about. But she decided that she was going to blame Mr. Michael Sinclair because that's probably the only guy that she told Daniel Greenspan about. You understand, brothers? This is why it's very important that when you're dealing with a female that you understand who the other guys are in orbit around her. Because many of these females, they have a series of guys that they are allowing to orbit their atmosphere. And you have to know who these people are so that you don't allow yourself to get caught up in the cesspool. Because when it's all said and done, they're going to play the victim role and you're going to end up incapacitated or dead. That's why I state no, a man and a woman cannot be friends. The vast majority of the time when a man and woman are friends, it's only because the man is being patient and waiting for his chance to hit that, or the woman is being patient and she probably can't get a man and she finally found someone to give her a little bit of attention and she's hoping that she can wear that guy down and finally find a boyfriend or husband. Because the essential nature of the man and woman are to come together. The Lord didn't create Adam and Eve and say, okay, now go to Starbucks and have a good conversation over coffee. He formed them and he said, okay, be fruitful and multiply. That's how that goes. But please understand that it would not shock me at all, just getting back to the story, if there was a third, fourth, or fifth guy involved that she does not want to name because she doesn't want to look like a hoe. Because at the end of the day, Michael Sinclair is dead and Daniel Greenspan is going to prison. So she doesn't have to talk about anybody else. All she has to do is absolve herself of any culpability and move on with her life. She'll have help doing that.
Because if you didn't contact him, what?
Dan was gonna keep beating me and hurt my family.
And what happens?
Sorry, this is really hard for me.
So let me get this straight. The Jewish white boy said that if you don't bring Michael Sinclair to a select location, he was going to keep beating your ass and he was going to kill your family. So who the fuck is he, Rambo? Give me a break. There's definitely something rotten in Denmark here.
For me to talk about. I did what he told me to do.
Noriella lured Michael to the street where he was gunned down.
Now look at this. This bitch lured the dude Michael Sinclair to his death. Now when you read up about this story, it states that she claims that she thought that Daniel Greenspan was just going to rob him. Either way, the intentions were nefarious.
Down. For years, Daniel escaped prosecution while Noriella
Look at this broad taking her mugshot trying to look innocent and harmless.
was charged with murder. But her lawyer, Michael Dowd, argued, you have to understand the circumstances.
I understand the circumstances very well. She got caught playing a hoe, and to get herself out of it, now she has to play the good girl again. That's why that's the title of this segment. Look at the title of this segment, The Good Girl.
Is Noriella Santos a battered woman?
Oh, there's no question about it.
Yeah, she's battered spiritually. Physically, that's questionable. I need to see some photos of some bruises or something, because that's just her saying that the guy was whooping her ass. Maybe he was. I need to see some photos, though.
So that Noriella Santos isn't a co-conspirator?
No.
She's a victim?
She definitely is a victim.
You hear that, brothers? You understand that? That's how they're going to allow the female to be depicted if you allow yourself to get caught up in a web of deceit, man. Okay? Utilize great scrutiny. Be very scrupulous when you're dealing with these females. You don't have to be paranoid, but you do have to be aware. And always make sure that you have all your shit together. That's why I always tell you, brothers, there's nothing wrong with being an isolationist for a moment or time period in your life until you get yourself together. There's no rush. A lot of you cats, especially a lot of you young brothers, you don't have anything. You don't even know what you want to be in life, but you want to run up in all these broads. And most of these broads ain't worth, in the words of Nas, I'm trying to remember what song it was that he made this statement. I think it was the song Carry the Cross on the Godson album. He said, "You're not worth the pussy you sit on." A lot of these broads ain't worth the pussy they sitting on. I know certain people going to get offended by that. I don't give a shit. All right? A lot of dudes out here ain't worth the nutsack they sitting on too. It goes both ways. But my channel is geared towards the so-called black man. Black man has to be the head, so he has to be able to see things clearly. If people don't like that, oh well.
She is such a damaged person.
I agree. She's damaged mentally and psychologically, and she's going to have to carry around the lies that she told for the remainder of her life. Because at the end of the day, she got a man killed, and he got himself killed, to be quite frank with you, because he wasn't paying enough attention to the signs. I'm sure that there were signs. You have to pay attention to the signs. Is that woman taking a long time to text you back? Is all of a sudden, is she acting different? Is she claiming to be busy on the weekends all the time now? These different things are signs for you to understand that there's not a female to be taken seriously. She's trying to lure you out to strange locations. Why are you going to a strange party location out in Long Island? What the fuck is out there? I don't understand. You traveling all that way to get some coochie. You get in the car, you meet her, y'all drive off, you get the coochie, you take her back home, or y'all go out on your date or whatever. Why are you going to some strange party for? You're 32 years old, she's 19 years old. What type of interest could you have in partying with a 19-year-old and you're 32 years old? This is what I mean when I say to you, brothers, I always put the onus on the man, because I don't expect much from these agents of chaos that are the modern day liberal women of America, or the Western civilization, whatever you want to call it.
She doesn't operate the way people would expect her to.
Damaged person?
This bitch said that she doesn't operate the way people would expect her to. That's an excuse. You're claiming that she's highly intelligent. That means that her cognitive function is working, allegedly, right? That means that she must be held accountable for her actions.
Or someone who wants to get away with murder.
Yes, sir. You already know.
Jim Axelrod is with us. Good morning.
Look at Jim face. Jim face like, tune in tomorrow night. See if this bitch got away.
Morning, Jim.
That's the question.
Was Noriella's boyfriend Danny ever prosecuted?
Yeah, so he was. He used to go back and forth between Manhattan and Israel on one of those trips. He was busted. Last year, he stood trial. He had a pit bull of a defense lawyer.
Of course, he's Jewish.
Arthur Aidala, who threw everything at the jury, including a stem winder of a summation where he even referenced my cousin Vinny. And we will show you some of Arthur Aidala in the courtroom as part of this riveting story tomorrow night on 48 Hours.
But I keep thinking about the Sinclair family, because now they've lost someone who they love. Did the prosecutors believe her story that she was forced to do that because she was worried about getting beaten up?
So Nancy Clifford, the prosecutor, came to believe this. She saw medical records, she saw police records, and Noriella also had some support of some other folks as well, including a wealthy philanthropist who put up $750,000 cash bail.
Now listen to that, brothers. This is why I stated earlier in this video that there are going to be some elements revealed that show that this female has connections and they have plans for her in the future. How the hell you some, so-called woman of color from Long Island and you have a wealthy philanthropist bail you out when you're in a tough situation, a bail that is almost seven figures, $750,000. This is not somebody that was able to have family members pull together a $8,000 or $10,000 bail, $750,000 bail. And remember, she has connections to the Clinton Foundation. So what plans do they have for this female here? Is she going to be running around now telling Black and Hispanic women about domestic violence? Is that going to be what they're going to use her for? Just watch out for this person and by the name of Noriella Santos, who got that man killed. And by the way, postscript, the Caucasian Jewish boyfriend, Daniel Greenspan, got sentenced to 25 years to life, and he claims his innocence.
But did she know he was going to kill them?
Tune in tomorrow night.
Tune in.
She alleges that she did not know that he was going to be killed. She claims that he thought he was just going to be robbed.
Yeah,
I know. I'm so fascinated by this
a
story.
tragic and intriguing story, Jim. Thank you.
Yes.
And you can watch Jim's full report, The Good Girl, tomorrow night on 48 Hours. That's at 10, 9 Central here on CBS.
But anyway, brothers, this was certainly a cautionary tale. Hopefully many of you brothers adhere to what you saw here in this segment, because it can happen to you if you're not very, very careful. Most of these modern day liberal females do not care about anything or anyone. So make sure that you show great scruples before you allow a female to ascend up the hierarchical ladder in your life and you declare her a girlfriend, or that's your woman, or what have you. But anyway, peace.